Deputy Speaker, the damaged and declining state of Australia's environment is not going to be addressed by an exercise in collective amnesia. It is outrageous that the State of Environment Report 2021 was kept secret by the Morrison government. Why was it hidden? Because it tells a story of harm and damage and neglect. It tells a story about the consequences of inaction and incompetence. For 9 years, we had a coalition government that did not believe the health of our environment was a priority. They rolled 5 separate ministers through the portfolio. They cut funding to the department by 40%, and then they hid the truth about the consequences of their neglect. The truth, Deputy Speaker, is a story of significant harm, with a trajectory, sadly, of further decline. In describing the report in an address to the National Press Club, the Minister for Environment rightly said, and I quote, "While it's a confronting read, Australians deserve the truth. We deserve to know that Australia has lost more mammal species to extinction than any other continent. We deserve to know that threatened communities have grown by 20% in the past 5 years, with places literally burned into endangerment by catastrophic fires." Deputy Speaker, as the report itself says, overall, the state and trend of the environment of Australia are poor and deteriorating as a result of increasing pressures from climate change, habitat loss, invasive species, pollution and resource extraction. Deputy Speaker, unless we are reconciled to the further degradation of our environment and its biodiversity, we have to change our approach. Our National Environmental Protection Framework, the EPBC, has been ineffective as a shield against that harm. That is the conclusion of Professor Graham Samuel, the reviewer appointed by the previous government. Labor has been clear in saying that we will undertake the necessary reform that the previous government failed to undertake. If we are not prepared to do things differently, then only one thing is for sure. More and more unique Australian species will disappear. More and more distinctive Australian ecosystems will collapse. There simply has to be an uncompromising element to environmental protection in future. There has to be a hard-eyed capacity to see cumulative impacts and to draw some lines in the sand around the protection of threatened species and ecosystems. Deputy Speaker, we know how and where the harm is occurring. The question is, what are we going to do about it? I say this to colleagues in the Parliament as much as to the broader Australian community. We cannot go on like this and at the same time kid ourselves that our biodiversity can be maintained. We cannot have a regulatory approach that essentially condones the steady degradation of the Australian environment. We can't keep finding ways to conditionally approve forms of harm that in some cases are not acceptable, especially where conditions are not monitored and not met. And we can't, as a matter of habit, use offsets to fix projects that put threatened species or ecosystems at risk when offsets aren't properly recorded or audited and, in effect, allow a net loss of critical habitat. We can't subscribe to the view that any and every form of environmental impact can be approved, provided there is a sufficient economic benefit. And as I've said before, we can't fool ourselves with the concept of striking a balance, when the reality has been a profound imbalance against nature for some considerable time. What we need to do is change, and we can change. As the State of the Environment Report itself says, immediate action with innovative management and collaboration can turn things around. And as we look to creating the long-absent First Nations voice in our system of decision-making, the report notes, and I quote, "Respectful use of Indigenous knowledge, recognition of Indigenous knowledge rights and Indigenous and non-Indigenous knowledge systems working together will lead to positive change." So, Deputy Speaker, let us be both resolute and energised as we face up to the task at hand. There are lots of examples of ordinary citizens and activists and scientists and public service and Indigenous rangers putting their heart and soul into environmental conservation and restoration. Things are not good, but we can do something about it. It requires us in this place to do our job, to be the stewards of this remarkable continent and its oceans. It doesn't mean zero projects or zero clearing or zero impact, but it does mean supporting the reforms and resources that are necessary to stop the further decline in Australia's environment. The Minister for the Environment was absolutely right when she said what our environment really needs is a changed system. That's the message from the Samuel Review. That's the message from the State of the Environment Report. And I would say in conclusion, Deputy Speaker, That is one of the clearest messages that the Australian people gave to all of us on the 21st of May when they elected this, the 47th Parliament.
I thank the